Hey everybody, welcome to the first edition of me reviewing the top excuse me, top discussions of the week. So this is Friday, February 12th, and I want to just go through a few of the top things that happened this week because here at the Conversation of Our Generation, we are solving the problems of today with the wisdom of the past. And I just want to talk a little bit about what some of the current events are because if we're going to solve the problems of today, we have to know what some of those things are facing us. So that's what we're going to do. And that's what this is for. So it's also my first live YouTube video. So if you're interested, if you're liking this, definitely leave some comments and ask questions. Feel free if you're watching this live. I'm definitely looking to hear anything that may have come up this week in in your world, anything that you notice that I don't cover here. But obviously, one of the big things is that Tom Brady won his 7th Super Bowl and I would say solidified himself as the GOAT. Personally, as a Colts fan, I hate to admit it, probably more than admitting to be wrong about anything else. I can't think of one thing that I hate more than having to say this, but he is probably the greatest of all time. And that actually sparked a big controversy of people saying, how can you say he's the greatest football player? There's X person, Y person, and it it also even greatest athlete of all time. I think it's hard to discuss greatest athlete when you're talking about different sports because really, how can you tell the difference between a football player who's playing a team sport and you know decathlete or someone like that who's playing a single sport, right? It's very hard to judge the difference there, I think, and just the different types of sports. Golf and basketball are very different and require very different types of athleticism. And so I think it's hard, but lots of people talking about Serena Williams being the greatest or other interesting takes that just had to be about diversity or something like that. That they just had to put them out there not because they actually merit it, but because they want to push a diverse idea of who the greatest is. And so it was interesting. I got a link to one of Ben Shapiro's tweets in here in the article. So you can, if you go to the show description or the description of this feed, you can check that out as well and see what's going on there. And then I'm making sure here that this is loud enough. It looks like it is. All right. Like I said, this is the first one, so I have to see how it goes. And then the next things were the top podcast this week. And I really enjoyed the Pints with Jack episode where David talked to Jason Lepjarvi. I'm think I'm butchering his name, but it was a very interesting conversation about love, sex, marriage, and how the devil tempts you away. And one of the things that I really liked was they discussed this idea of how can love be abundant, right? We live in a world of scarce resources. And one thing that I don't remember them saying that I was thinking and that I've thought about before is if God is love, God is infinite. And if he is love and he's able to infuse everything with that power of creating more love, it's sort of like in economies when you do have like we can see it in economics where when you have a scarce resource you can actually make them more abundant by using them properly. We've seen an increase in wealth despite the fact that the resources are just as scarce on this earth as ever, but we find a way to use them better. And when you have better access to scarcity, you have more abundance. But when you have something that is not scarce like love, which is infinite, love creates more love. In fact, it's more like sunlight, right? You can block out sunlight and you can do that, but me enjoying sunlight doesn't affect the fact that you can go out and stand in the sun and get the sunlight as well. So that's how I look at it almost with love, is that it's something that is already super abundant, and the more you share it, the more there is. And I really enjoyed that discussion talking about a lot of the same things. And so definitely check out the Pints with Jack there. David, as always, does a great job on that. And I also loved the Rubin Report roundtable with Peter Boghossian, Eric Metaxas, and Rabbi Wolpe, where they just confronted a number of different things facing our culture from the Christian, Jewish, and really atheist perspectives. And I enjoyed that a lot. I thought it was just interesting to hear where they agreed. I think that I think that all three agreed on the major issues, but how you solve those, that's where the disagreement came. It seemed like that, which makes sense because it's very obvious to see something that's broken and get an atheist, a rabbi, and a Christian together and say, oh, yeah, that's broken. But now it's asking the question, how do you fix it? They're going to have very different solutions. And so that was just a really interesting roundtable, I thought. And then some great social chatter that happened was we had an interesting thread come up at the Classical Con. He on Twitter, he posted an idea about central government being the best way to solve things, and he and I had a great exchange, very amicable, very he's always ready to debate me and vice versa. I think we enjoy that, but always do it in a way that isn't attacking the other person or putting down the other person, because we recognize that we agree on many things, and where we disagree is generally not hugely important. This is one that I do think is fairly important where we do disagree. And so if you want to see a good argument, Twitter argument over whether or not we should have more states' rights or a stronger central government is, and the effects of having the central government versus states solve problems, that's a good one. And it's also a great example of a debate on Twitter that didn't turn into ad hominem and chaos. So definitely a good one. And another discussion that I had with someone with the handle at H_0_, it's honor with zeros and underscores in there. This person, I think, did, and I'm trying to get his name so you can also search him by that because I forget it. Censorship is cancer. It was a very interesting conversation. I had a tweet that I put out about a week ago that was like along the lines of you can have true religion or false religion, but you can't have no religion. Just pointing out the fact that no matter what, you're going to serve somebody. And he had a good discussion there about the difference between religion and dogma. And I thought that that was tremendous. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. And so I wanted to thank him for having that conversation. And hopefully we can have some more good dialogues because, again, that was just a great interaction on Twitter that was not vitriolic or anything like that. And then something funny that happened was I was obviously with the Super Bowl, curious if the wokeness turned people off. And so I had some polls about which my followers, it seemed like the people who didn't watch the Super Bowl this year generally don't watch the Super Bowl is about the exact same percentage, one with a bigger sample size, but both with around 50 to 100 responses. So both, it seems like, that hasn't turned people off of it, but Frank Cunha, who was on my podcast a couple weeks ago, said that he was busy reading the book that the Aureus Brendan from the Aureus Press wrote, and so who has also been on my podcast before. So I thought that was pretty funny as well. Instead of watching Brady make more history, which pains me to say again, but yeah, Frank was out there reading, and so props to him on that one. And then the last two, I don't know if I mentioned this much, but I was on the Survival podcast last week. So I put that in there because it was a great discussion about discussions and how do we have good, productive conversations with people we disagree with, which is obviously something that I'm passionate about here, and finding a way to order that towards truth, towards not just being able to agree to disagree and sort of never make progress in a conversation, but to actually find ways to teach each other, to learn from each other, and to understand the other person's perspective in a new way. And so that's what I talked about there. And then also my great conversation with the guys from the Vital Masculinity podcast, which I always enjoy having Steven on. I think every single time I walk away with just some great insights and a good sense of just camaraderie. Like when you talk to them, when you hear their podcast, it is just very much what talking to them is like. I mean, they're very casual, but really insightful. And I enjoy having those conversations with them. I think it's a lot of fun. So definitely check that out as well, because we talked a lot about how to build a more virtuous society from the ground up, starting with you as the individual, which again, as another thing that I've talked about quite a bit, is how can you say I'm going to be better and then help make those around me better and make my, family, community, my city, my state, building up from the basic, from the bottom, of starting with yourself. And because that's the one thing you can control and you can make better. And as you do that, you're able to expand that out to your family, especially if you have children or a spouse, you can work with those people to help them along the way as well. And so definitely a great conversation there. And that wraps up some of the great ones. So let me know if you had some interesting conversations that you saw out there, because I'm curious to hear what they were. I'm curious to find new people in the internet who are really thinking about some of these ideas in innovative and different ways. Just I like to find new ideas. I really do. I'm kind of a new idea addict. I'm not going to lie. But I just want to hear what you have out there, and remember to subscribe if you're enjoying what I have going on here with this with this live video, with the rest of my YouTube channel. Subscribe here on YouTube. You can subscribe to the podcast wherever that can be found. And you can go to conversationfourgeneration.com to find out all sorts of other stuff I got going on. You can just go to the newsletter, sign up there, or conversationfourgeneration.com/newsletter-sign up, and you can sign up and get this to breakdown in your inbox each week. So just shoot you the email, then I post the blog. I might start doing this. This is a trial, so we'll see how this goes. If it may not be an every week thing, it may be a some weeks thing. I don't know. So we'll see how that goes. But definitely sign up for the newsletter. And if you haven't bought my book yet, Property Rights in the Digital Age, I think that that's a great topic to be discussing right now, of how do we preserve our property rights as we move into this new era. We've seen changes in the past from throughout civilization to how we interact with our property. And this is just another iteration of that transition. And so how do we handle that in a good way? And that's what that book is about. So Property Rights in the Digital Age can be found on Amazon. Just search that or my name, Nick Jamel, and it'll pop up. And so thank you for joining me for this breakdown of some of the top discussions this week. It's not really an episode of the Conversation for Our Generation, but either way, cheers to it being the weekend, and let's get the dialogue going. I'll talk to you next time.